Don't we all love summer vacation, relaxing, laying out by the pool, barbecues, hitting the beach, doing, well, nothing? Well, how about a summer vacation from your house payments? With SaveWithConrad.com, you can do just that. Reduce your monthly payments by making the equity you built up in your home work for you. You can roll together those high interest rate credit cards into one lower monthly payment and perhaps access some of that newfound equity to turn your house into your dream home with no money out of pocket. And how about this? You get to skip your next two house payments. That's right. You won't have to make your June or your July house payment. You're done until August 1st. Go right now to SaveWithConrad.com. Let my team run the numbers for you for free. There's no obligation, and if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. And did I mention we're offering a 3-year guarantee right now? That's right. That means if at any point interest rates improve over the next 3 years, you get a free refi. That's right. No new lender fees from us. So you get to save money now without wasting money later when the rates improve on a whole second set of closing costs. Why not go to SaveWithConrad.com and get a guarantee? Save money now and save money later with your friend in the mortgage business. That's me, Conrad Thompson at SaveWithConrad.com. Shoot me an email at Conrad@SaveWithConrad.com. Give us a call at 888-425-0105. Or get yourself a quick quote, even talk to a live person right now at SaveWithConrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender. Let's take a summer vacation from house payments at SaveWithConrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad the Mortgage Guy, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, your friend and mine, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Good, my man. It is, I know it's only been, well, it's our regular schedule, but last week was super busy for me. I mean, Fargo, North Dakota, doing some AEW business, some baseball business, and then obviously Chicago, and then I went to Kane County Cougars, which is a American Association team right outside of Chicago. Spent a lot of time on the lake this weekend. I've been super busy in the middle of our topic today, and I know you're going to get us there, but all good. We are, we are in the dog days of summer, but all good, man. I am candidly, as we both kind of shared some texts, as we always do, and obviously in the wrestling world, lots of different texts going on, but in so many ways, I'm really looking forward to today's episode. Certainly my world, my thoughts. I'm curious to hear yours in a lot of ways and kind of where this episode takes us. But man, oh man, I've never been a Mount Rushmore guy. Because to each his own, and it's subjective and all that kind of stuff. But in a lot of ways, I think we lost a Mount Rushmore guy of the industry, certainly on mine. So
not Mount Rushmore guy, the Mount Rushmore guy.
Okay.
The reason the business enjoyed the popularity it did in the 80s is because of two men, Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. Of course, Vince had the business prowess and the balls to push it forward, but he needed the right guy, and look no further than Terry Bollea. We're celebrating the life of Hulk Hogan today on My World, and I got to give a shout out to Dave Meltzer, who I think did a fantastic job really rushing to do an obituary for Hulk Hogan. He didn't have very long to put it together, but boy, there were lots of details in there that I didn't know about. And some of those I'm going to bring to your attention today, Jeff. But I guess we should start at the beginning. You know, I just talked to Gerald Briscoe as a special guest on our Something to Wrestle with John Layfield podcast. And Briscoe told the story of really discovering Terry Bollea in a band playing bass guitar and encouraging him to get in the ring. There's Ruckus, where you saw Hogan was playing bass, and we think that would have been 1977 and then into 1978. But by 1979, Briscoe had hooked up the real life Terry Bollea with Louis Tilley in Alabama to use as almost a booking agent. That would have happened in March of 79.
Wow.
And he was going by Terry the Hulk Boulder. And I guess there was a story of him being on a talk show, and it was said that he was bigger than the guy who played the Incredible Hulk on TV, Lou Ferrigno. And the host kept going like, "Hey, you're the real Hulk," and that's totally made up, but it's often been accepted as being true. But what is true is that he starts working with Tulane in Alabama in March of '79, but by May, your dad had heard about Terry Bollea. And what a way to introduce an iconic wrestling character to a new territory. We're going to show you how they did that because your dad was a real innovator. Of course, talking about the late Jerry Jarrett, when it came to using music and video packages, he was really the first promoter who really, quote unquote, got it when it came to promoting wrestling on television. I've heard the story that your dad has told about, the Ultimate Warrior and Sting coming to the front door to looking for work. But tell me about, as best you can recall, your dad's first time meeting the real life Terry Bollea.
I was not there at this stage. So we're talking late 70s. I was born in 67. So, I'm 10, 11, 12 years old. But this was the time of my life that I was spending summers with my father. And so, I don't have I've heard different stories, and oh boy, Conrad, I don't even know where to kind of dive into. So I may be jumping around on timeline. But as we were as the passing on the Thursday, and as as the days kind of rolled on, and then you kind of let me know, hey, yeah, the tribute will be this episode coming up, and I was just kind of trying to think about his start, Hiro Matsuda. And I know that we're not here to talk about that because that wasn't a part of, pardon the pun, my world, but just kind of his start there, and then the Alabama days, and then coming to Memphis. And then, I'm a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid. And like I said, spending the summers with my old man, and he lived not far from where I'm sitting right now, but back in a subdivision. Obviously, this is late 70s. So, Hendersonville was a much smaller town and off the beaten path. And anyway, you had to wind back to his house. He had bought the house from George Jones and Timmy Wynette, and he was right on the point of the channel of old Hickory Lake. And it was split level, and you had to go. There it is. If you're watching on YouTube, you can kind of see this house. So if you're looking back right, it's that's the top level, but it had a downstairs. And so my bedroom was literally, and I've talked about, one of the first times that I kind of got smartened up and in joking, I saw one of my dad's legal pads, and he had week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5. I'm like, no, wait a minute. That looks like it's predetermined, but that's another story that I've shared before. But also, as a part of that, my dad had, I'm a little kid, and in those days, big screen TVs and all that kind of stuff, I'd never seen it. But the 3/4 inch tape, the first time that's the first time I ever saw Hulk was in those tapes. And my dad had Lawler highlights and Lawler Dundee highlights, and later 82, 83, 84, the Fab videos and the rock and roll. But one of the very first videos, my dad taught me how to run the machine, so I'd plug it in and out. And I kid you not, Conrad, I bet I have watched as a child the Hulk Hogan entrance theme hundreds of times. I was mesmerized by it. And the thing, Conrad, the VO on it, Michael St. John, which is a Alabama native. He lived in Nashville for years. He did called wrestling play-by-play for Nick Goulas back in the day. Then he went to work for my dad, and then he worked for me at TNA. He has been a lifer radio, a Hall of Famer in so many different ways. But his voice and the descriptive, and I will say, my dad had unique skill sets. I think his creativity certainly is a part of his legacy, but also I think being able to produce talent in certain ways, and just having a vision on it being, as you kind of referenced, a television product. And Hulk being a super raw talent, but that's something that I think we've all kind of witnessed before his passing, and certainly even after his passing, is that Hulk Hogan engages emotion almost like none other. And that video that introduced him to I'll call it the territory, the wrestling audience. In a lot of ways, you can't say he was made day one, but boy, oh boy, what a way to introduce a talent. And of course, Hulk looked the part. And again, we're talking, decades ago, and you just didn't see talent like this come through. And obviously, it's just a different era prior to cable television. But man, Conrad, the Hulk Hogan intro video, and it's circulated around online. But I think it's something that I think today is very applicable, because the suspension of disbelief was a pillar of my old man's kind of philosophy. And I think you got to have a philosophy. I think it's your guiding principle. But from the very first words Michael St. John speaks on the video, it evokes emotion. And I think that was what my old man was going for. And obviously Hulk, from day one, knew how to look like a star.
So the real life Terry Bollea starts wrestling in 1977. That's when he starts training with Hiro Matsuda and the Briscoes. In 1978, he's going to start working in that Tampa market, having a series of matches with Brian Blair. By 79, the Briscoes think he's ready to start taking bookings. So Tulane, Alabama is the connection that happens. That's March of 79. So if you're keeping score at home, that means the real life Terry Bollea's home territory was the Gulf Coast territory. So he's going to be wrestling in Dothan and in Mobile and in Pensacola, in my stomping grounds, if you will. And that all starts happening in March of 79. So in May of 79, so less than 60 days after Hogan has decided to venture out into different territories, not just Tampa, but the Gulf Coast and now Tennessee, your dad takes one look at him and says, I've got an idea. And that house we showed earlier there in Hendersonville, the old George Jones house, that's where this video was filmed. One of the announcers, and I think Dave Silva actually has a trading card, an old image of Michael St. John. He was one of the talking heads for the Memphis territory. And there he is right there. Now he's going to do the voiceover for the video we're about to watch. And I want everybody to appreciate what you're about to watch is 46 years old. This is from May of 1979, wow. Over 46 years ago, wow. Long before he had worked on a national platform, long before Hulkamania was running wild. This is the earliest hype video and promotional video out there of the incredible Hulk Hogan before he was even called Hulk Hogan. Let's take a listen.
When they see this guy, that they won't forget that Terry Boulder is the Hulk. Let's take a look at it right now.
This man is not a television illusion. He is not an artist's conception. He is not a figment of the imagination. He is real. He stands an amazing 6'7" tall. He weighs an incredible 324 pounds. He is the Hulk. The Hulk, without a doubt, is the most awesome figure in professional wrestling today. His measurements are almost unbelievable. His neck measures 24 3/4 inches. His chest expands to an incredible 59 inches. His biceps are 26 inches, and at the end of these powerful arms are two 12-inch fists. This magnificent upper body tapers off to only a 34-inch waist. The Hulk is supported by tree-like legs that can leg press over 1,900 pounds. Combine these amazing measurements with more brute strength than you can imagine, and you have the Hulk. And the Hulk is coming here.
Boy. No, we won't forget that the Hulk is Terry Boulder.
I'm sure that people out there can all see that.
That was a very young Brutus Beefcake. Ed Leslie's his real name. He was going by Eddie Dizzy Boulder at the time. And then here comes Terry the Hulk Boulder. Man, that video that your dad produced with the Michael St. John hype video, I mean, there's that there is a roadmap that Vince McMahon would certainly borrow. Every promoter after that would really focus on the size, but man, how ahead of his time your dad was 46 years ago. What a cool presentation. What a cool way to bring a guy in.
After the news came out and, and I don't want to get too far ahead, I don't say it dawned on me, but I started going back, like I said, from, coming to, in Alabama, but, he came to Memphis and that's when I don't have any, real knowledge of how they promoted him in Alabama, but I know old man looked at him and said, damn, what a star. And just kind of the mindset, my dad's booking philosophy and promoting philosophy and character development philosophy from a very early, Hulk's first one, and just kind of the trajectory. And I think of kind of the unique journey that the Jarretts and Hulk and kind of that was the launching point right there that we've had. And my gosh, again, I don't get too far ahead, but from Memphis to, and I know his different stops along the way, but in so many ways, the influence, and I'll just say Jarrett and Jerry Lawler had on Hulk is, in a lot of ways, it was his college degree or getting his master's or whatever it may, what an education in a great way. And what an opportunity it was, that picture we're showing right now, to have Lance Russell as your studio host. Lance was so good, and just, obviously Hogan could always talk, but you just kind of look at the nurturing and the character development and how things developed and where he went from here. It's just cool to kind of look at his journey and how it's, in a lot of ways, his first territory to be promoted like a mega star was right here.
It is so cool to see the humble beginnings of the Hulk Hogan character. As a reminder, that was May of '79, and we would see Hogan start as a babyface partner for Jerry Lawler in matches against the Mongolian Stomper and Gorgeous George Jr. And he's going to work a few big shows for the Jarretts here, but he's still based in the Gulf Coast. He would actually beat Ox Baker for the Southeastern Championship the first week of June in 1979. And he would, of course, drop it to another guy who was a big influence to Hulk Hogan, Austin Idol, just a week later. Austin Idol is a guy who's really closely associated with Memphis too, Jeff. And, one of the things that Austin Idol did is he patterned his career largely after superstar Billy Graham. And he was using the phrase Idol Mania, and he would always use the term Jack. It feels like later Hogan would adopt Idol Mania and change it to Hulkamania. And whereas Austin Idol was saying Jack, Hogan would hit brother. The formation of the Hulk Hogan character has a lot of roots in Memphis. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, just no doubt. And it was, when you watch kind of the obits that have happened over the last 3 or 4 days, you will hear the host say brother. It's funny how, that's been obviously used in all kinds of forms, but it's like that was in so many ways Hogan's signature catchphrase, brother. And whether he was a heel or a babyface, but yeah, Idol, old Mike McCord, who's still rocking and rolling today. And we have a good relationship, go back and forth and text about all kinds of things. But yes, Idol, his mannerisms and how he could make just incredible promos and create an aura. And, when you look at Hogan and Idol, you don't ever remember, oh my God. Yeah, I mean, Hogan, he did have a few, so I don't want to completely say that, but they're more remembered for their aura, their promos, their look, their charisma than any one particular match. And I think the similarities of those two guys being cut from the same mold, and man, I hope this translates the right way. The art of drawing money is something that, I mean, when I broke in and look, I always, Lawler had a certain way on how he sold tickets through promos, and you could hear Hogan and you can hear Idol and all those guys, the real art of talking people into the arena. You just kind of look at, okay, Hogan coming to the territory. I think Lawler is right up there at the best, if not the best, of doing a money promo, and Idol too. I mean, I saw it as a rookie and my first couple of years bring Idol in, but my old man wouldn't even think about bringing Idol in unless Idol would go down to the local TV station or go wherever he could, and he'd have to send promos in, and he would send town specific: Memphis, Louisville, Evansville, Nashville. Hey, Idol, talk to your people in Nashville and get them out to the building. So he would say, "What's up, Nashville?" I mean, talk specifically to the audience, and you kind of look at the formation of how Hogan's mentality. And again, I'm an observer of history in so many ways, but also the direct communication, obviously, with Lawler and my father that I had about that. And another guy, Eddie Marlin. So my dad remarried Eddie's daughter, Deborah. She's my stepmom. But Eddie was the promoter, and he worked in this territory. But Eddie used to like to tell a story because he was my dad's right hand man. He was a spot show promoter, figurehead, authority figure. His father-in-law, I mean, pulled ring, just did it all. But my dad would always, when different guys would come into the territory, and there's all kinds of stories back to Don and Al Green on saving money, and how influential my grandmother was on many, many wrestlers, on saying, hey, I'm paying you every week, so let's go set up a savings account. So when you get the savings account, you can put your money in the savings account first. So my grandmother had that kind of role, but my father obviously knew that, okay, a guy's going to come into my territory. You're going to drive a lot of miles if you're here for a short time or a long time. I mean, there's even up till, we're talking 70s, but, decades later, there's different stories like that. But my old man facilitated getting Hogan a Cadillac. And Eddie, my grandfather, used to tell stories about that and how appreciative he was. And anyway, just there's story after story after story about the formative years of Hogan here.
We've got a lot to talk about with Hulk Hogan. We of course did not know that we would be doing this episode today, so we've sold advertising today. Normally, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that in a tribute show, but this isn't one we could have planned for. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back after these words. All right, guys, I love bragging about Brunt. This is a company I really believe in, and what I love is their origin story. I'm talking about their founder, Eric. He grew up blue collar, and he started Brunt Workwear after his friends in the trades kept telling him that the big brands had just stopped listening. They hadn't evolved in like 100 years. They just sold out and become kind of like fashion brands. Well, all of Eric's buddies encouraged him to start a brand built for them. And that's why all of the Brunt products are named after the guys that Eric grew up with. Real hardworking tradesmen. And I love that story. But what Eric wanted was to not have to sacrifice comfort for durability. Meaning, if the boots look cool, well, they're going to wreck your feet. And if they don't wreck your feet, well, they're not going to look very cool. What if you could get some great boots that come comfortable right out of the box? No more long, painful break-in periods like the other boots, but they're not just comfortable. They actually work on the job site. They're built to perform. They're waterproof. They've got safety toe and soft toe and pull on and lace up. That's what Brunt is all about. Brunt Workwear is made so it can handle whatever job site you're walking onto. And they don't just make boots either. They've got an incredible full range of high-performance gear built for the toughest jobs. They've got heavy-duty work pants and weather-resistant jackets. But what I really love about this product is that Brunt stands behind everything they make. They want you to try them out on the job site. Yeah, wear these boots to your messy-ass job site. And if you're not satisfied, send them back. I've never even heard of another brand doing that, and that's because Brunt knows they believe in their product, and they know you will too. Brunt was tired of all these workwear brands out there cutting corners. You work too hard to be stuck in uncomfortable boots that won't last. So they built something better, boots that are insanely comfortable and built for every job site. So for a limited time, our listeners can get $10 off at Brunt when you use our code MyWorld at checkout. Just head on over to bruntworkwear.com. Use the code MyWorld, and you're good to go. And after you order, they'll ask you where you heard about Brunt. do us a favor and tell them it was from this show. We're talking about all things Hulk Hogan today. And of course, we're spending a little bit of time talking about his Memphis run first. The program that we were just seeing referenced in that clip that we just aired was going to, of course, wind up with Terry challenging Ron Bass many times for the Southeastern title, and Hogan is going to become, I guess at the time he's still going by Boulder. He's going to become full time through early September, and that's when Terry Funk hooks him up with Barnett. And Barnett is somebody who had used Hogan before as Sterling Golden in advance of his WWE debut. But this early era of Hulk Hogan, I think, is something that a lot of young wrestlers should draw inspiration from, because what we're seeing is the evolution of a guy who's learning his craft. He's going to go by a few different names and a few different looks, and he's a heel there and he's a baby face here. We're a ways away from settling into the red and yellow and the Hulk Hogan shtick that we've all become so familiar with, and has led to all these impersonations and impressions, and I mean, just a pop culture icon. But he didn't start that way, Jeff, did he?
Not at all. And hell, Conrad, I'm going to be all over the place on this episode, but one of the things when Vince McMahon just, when he posted, one of the things that I nodded my head at, because it is something that I always heard my old man, if you talk to him long enough, if there was one of those car rides and talking about different people, and when him and Lawler had that relationship, but when you kind of go look back in different things, but I can hear in my dad's voice, and obviously it was pretty cool that I thought Vince put in there, was Hulk's work ethic. That yes, he rose to heights and all those kind of stuff, but man, the Hiro Matsuda story coming out of Tampa in the entertainment business from the music side, the grind, but then Alabama, then Tennessee, and different places, and the Japan that we'll get into, and AWA and all that, and then when the big mega thing break took place, all through kind of his grind for years, he wasn't afraid to roll up his sleeves and go to work. And I think I respect, when you look at Cena in his run, you look at Taker in his run, when you look at different like long-term careers, the one common thread is they paid their dues, they came up the hard way, probably had more failures than successes early, but kept keeping on and keep it on and keep it on. And I think we're in that era of Hogan, that man, the grind. And like you said, the Hulk Hogan complete character was far, far from defined. But he learned a little from Idol. We're going to touch on here. I think Lawler's influence on Hogan showed through his entire career.
Yeah, I want to spend a few minutes talking about that, because I actually think that Memphis gets a bad rap. For so long you hear people, and these are talking heads on the internet and old timers from back in the day, when they have a podcast or do an interview, they might say something like, "Oh, that was just that Memphis crap," or whatever the case may be. It was always sort of dismissed. But it's something that was never lost on me, that Hulk Hogan really learned a lot in Memphis. Years later, when, Eric Bischoff was trying to figure out how can we compete with the WWF and Vince McMahon, it was actually Hulk Hogan who suggested to Eric, "Hey, you should call Jerry Jarrett." And Jerry Jarrett was actually getting a consulting check at one point in time from both Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff at the exact same time. So that shows you the high regard that both Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan held for Jerry Jarrett. But one of the things I think that is maybe misunderstood is, forever and ever this example is used. Oh, in the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions, they like to have the heel champion, and they felt like the money was in the chase. They wanted the baby faces of the world, the Stings and the Magnum TAs. They wanted them to chase the title. They felt like the quote unquote money was in the chase. Now, if you took a look at the WWF, it's often regarded, and it's even spoke about, as being a babyface territory. Well, I think everybody knows the story. Bruno Sammartino was certainly the big baby face there. And then after him, of course, famously, it was Hulk Hogan. But I think the way Hulk Hogan was booked in the WWF, boy, it sure does feel an awful lot like the way Jerry Lawler was presented in Memphis. You had this superhero baby face, and then almost like a heel factory. That's the phrase that's often being used to describe the list of opponents that Hulk Hogan faced in the WWF. But that heel factory mentality, man, that was born out of the Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum, Jerry Lawler versus the world. Was it not, Jeff?
And that was the thing that again, I've reflected over that over the last couple of days. Kind of the true booking philosophy of Jerry Jarrett and how the Lawler, and there is that sense of emotional attachment. And it's been floating around online where the Rock Hogan match, and when Rock covered Hogan and he did the kick out and did that shaking his head and starting to hulk up, like the amount of times Jerry Lawler did that is because he did it 5, 6, 7 nights a week in the territory for years and years and years. But kind of it's commonly referred to as the Hulk up. If you're a Memphis fan and kind of know the history, it was Lawler's staple, is that Lawler would go out and create an instant story, and that's something that I try to carry to this day, but immediately establish the story of the match and work the match. And then depending upon how good Lawler's opponent was, and I say that, how experienced or whatever it may be, the story could go 3 or 4 minutes, 7 or 8 minutes, 10 or 12 minutes, sometimes, a Dundee match, 20 or 25 minutes, but then boom, you truly do the heat spot. And once the heat spot goes, like Lawler had an uncanny ability. Look, if he's working with a green guy, he went right for heat, because Lawler could make anybody's punches or kicks, or if they just had one thing they could do well in their repertoire, you went right to heat, and you sold and you sold and you sold and you sold. Lawler was a master at selling by staying alive. If there's any one thing Lawler taught me as a babyface, it was that art, being able to stay alive and not die, but continue to get the sympathy. And you're really just getting your heel opponent over to an enormous magnitude. But once there was some life shown in Lawler, and sometimes it would be a facial response, sometimes it would be just a clenched fist, sometimes it would be a stronger kick out than a 1-2 barely kick out. It's all in body chemistry, in body emotion, and all that kind of stuff. But once Lawler would start to, gather his Superman strength, and what Lawler's calling card was get up, and it wasn't an instant no sell. It was a little bit less sell and a little bit less sell and a little bit, really build it and really build it. And sometimes he'd have the heel ground him again and they'd go back down. But once Lawler built it up and the people rumbled, Lawler pulled the strap down, and then it was ass kicking time. And when you look at the formative years of Hogan, he translated that in so many ways that he started to rumble, and it would go from, a deep sell to a little bit, just gradually doing that comeback. And a lot of times Hogan would take all the punches and then he would block it and point, and the whole arena knew, all right, here comes ass kicking time. And when you kind of compare the comebacks and you see it on the Hogan stage over and over and over and over and over, you go, okay, there is just an enormous lineage of Hogan's comeback that came from Lawler. And I think it's really cool, but B, I think it's the art of the ultimate babyface, is that you always give them hope. And that's, we're going to get into promo style. I'm sure you'll go down that path here. But as far as Hogan's work style, it is really the art in his formative years. And then when he got rolling through the heel factory, just how good he made his opponents look. Of course, that's by design, because then you're beating somebody.
Talk to me about the promos. You said we'll get there, but if you've got something you want to share with us about the promo style, let's do it.
Well, just Hogan's trademark line, like in his Hulkamania days, I'll call it. But like say your prayers, take your vitamin, train, say your prayers, take your vitamins. Like the mass appeal, say your prayers. Okay, so I think he's going to have the moms. Oh wow, okay, train. So he's got the fathers and the sons. Take your vitamins, kind of a family thing. It was the all-American, and that's his music and all that. But and then the Hulkamania, you were a part of a movement, and you felt it. And Lawler and look, there's different baby faces, lots of across all of professional wrestling. But how you make them and engage them and make them part of your movement. You are Hogan's our leader, and I'm going to be a part of that movement. And Hogan, in so many ways, came on the national scene and mastered that. And he was the first of the first of the first to have that positive message and be a part of a movement. And I'm going to be the man that fights for the right causes and overcomes evil. It was really in its heyday. It was a sight to behold.
One of the other ones that's often forgotten about because he didn't do it in all of his promos, but when they knew there was marketing that was aiming straight at kids, they would often say the 4 commandments of Hulkamania are the ones you rattled off. But the fourth one was, and always listen to your parents, which I thought was a really nice touch because in sales, sometimes we have to deal with what's known as an objection. Like, hey, I like your product or service, but, and then they're going to tell you the reason they're not going to move forward. Well, I've always felt like the best time to overcome that objection is preemptively, like just address it before it can come up. And I know a lot of moms and dads back in the day had to worry about their kids being a little too rambunctious, a little too rowdy, maybe having too much physicality with one another and accidentally hurting someone. So I know that wrestling at times had to be negotiated. Like certain moms and dads didn't want their kids watching that sort of thing. I get it. So I think it's kind of cerebral of Vince and the Hulkster to slide in. Oh, by the way, the fourth one is always listen to your parents.
And I think brilliant. And there's so many folks that, and look, what we're saying today is completely subjective. I get it. It's me and Conrad's opinion. But the reality of wrestling was red hot in the territory days. So Hulk Hogan on a territory by territory, my bad, the WWF on a territory by territory basis, it's the advent of cable television, the explosion that in the territories, and in this territory, the Rock and Roll and the Fabs and Lawler and Dundee and Dutch and Terry Taylor, and we could go down that whole list. But so same with Watts, same with Texas, all the territory. But when you went into this kind of national scene, and I'll call it, like you said, maybe the marketing strategy or the vision statement was, we are going to mass market to all the demos. And the hook that you just said, it is, hey, wrestling is real, and okay, if it's real, that means it's predicated on violence and all the stuff, the potential, what you said, be proactive. So like the negatives that, oh wait, that's why they were so eager in the late 80s. No, this is sports entertainment. It's all about the dollars and cents and the marketing and the positioning that we can't market. We can't talk out two sides of our mouth and say, oh, no. We won't. We want to market to kids. This is not extreme violence. Even I'm not saying extremes using it different, but they're beating each other up with their fist in those days. So yes, those 4 commandments, I can remember. Oh my gosh. Gorilla, Vince, Lord Alfred Hayes, Saturday morning shows. I mean, yes, the Superstar show. Yeah, man, Connie, that brought back memories. I had forgotten all about the 4 commandments, but you are spot on with that one.
I want to talk a little bit more about Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan going national, but first we need to take another break. We'll be right back after these words. This weekend is the biggest SummerSlam ever. 2 nights, and MyBookie has odds on every single match. Jade Cargill's a heavy favorite over Tiffany Stratton for the WWE Women's title, and Drew McIntyre and Logan Pauls find themselves at plus 300 against Randy Orton and Jelly Roll. The betting odds are pretty lopsided for Roman Reigns and Jey Uso in their tag team match against Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. But at MyBookie, you're not just betting winners, you're betting entrances, turns, shock wins, and you're getting paid when you read the story right. Sign up with the code MyWorld, and MyBookie will back your first deposit. $100 gets you 50 extra. $200 gets you a Benjamin. What you do with it is up to you. 2 nights, SummerSlam 2025. Bet smart, cash in, only at MyBookie. Hey, Jeff, we are going to talk about Vince, but before we do, we're talking about Hulk in Memphis. And I know that, he comes back through, like by the time he comes back in February of 81, Hulkster's already becoming one of the bigger stars in wrestling. And it's a one-off match where he's going to come in as a heel to take on Jerry Lawler. And this is probably the clip from Hogan in Memphis that most of our fans have seen. And I know that a lot of this was leveraged once upon a time for the Wrestling Gold Series. And I know that even when Hulkster became a big national star, they would show clips of this match of Hulk doing a JOB for Jerry Lawler. Talk to me a little bit about, the way that footage was used with the benefit of hindsight. Like, nobody could have ever predicted. We knew that Hulk had momentum by February of 81, but nobody knew that Vince was going to go national or what Hulkamania would really look like on a larger scale. By that point, of course, the Memphis territory is on the downhill swing. So if we've got footage of Lawler beating up the biggest stars on TV today, why not use it, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, my dad's philosophy, the exact same philosophy was used with Andre the Giant. And
Yes.
when you think about Andre's stature to the old man, Vince Sr., let me say that, like that was, and Conrad, you can maybe help me out, but I would say Andre was the most protected talent in the world. Because there were champions and obviously in every territory, but Andre was the touring attraction and booked as such. But my dad still, old Jerry, had that philosophy that this is my territory that I have to, and he used to always say, I got to eat out of here, son. Yeah, I get that. But that was his mentality. And so was Lawler's. Hey, we got to eat out of here. So we have to protect. And he was so particular about protecting the integrity of our top babyface, which was Jerry Lawler. And so Hogan comes in, and again, there was multiple talent that did this, but they always made sure that they had footage and an out in the tape that made sure that Lawler looked good, if not great.
Did you get to meet Hulk Hogan before he was Hulk Hogan? I know we mentioned earlier that you were still a young person. I mean, like 12 years old in 79, but so by 81, you're like not even 14 yet, but did you see him in person at any of these early shows?
Louisville. That's because those would have been my grandmother trips. But no, I don't have any recollection of saying, hello, Mr. Hulk, as a 12, 13, 14-year-old boy. No.
We know that Billy Graham gets a lot of credit, and some of that, rightfully so, is because of the Dark Side of the Ring that aired last year. Maybe it was earlier this year, but they spent a lot of time talking about the similarities between what we would see with Hulk on top of the WWF, where he was certainly borrowing inspiration from Billy Graham. But Austin Idol is one that I don't think gets talked about nearly enough.
Great.
Austin Idol, regretfully, was never a national star, but boy, he was a big star in the territory days. Can you spend a little bit of time talking about the Austin Idol influence that Hulk Hogan had?
So when you look at when you go into mannerisms, and I just kind of went into detail on, it's commonly referred to now as the Hulk up, but it's the Superman power. And Lance used to say it's almost if it's Popeye, down in his spinach and all that kind of stuff. So those kind of mannerisms that, again, Hulk observed it, watched it. I'm sure Lawler called that for him in the ring at times, like, hey, man, you do my stuff because it's going to get over and all that. I mean, I know Lawler, I know how he works. If it works, he works toward the match. He always did. Contrary to some kind of narrative and all that kind of stuff, Lawler to me was a master at, and he taught me this, ingrained it in me. So did my old man. Work for the match. Everything else takes care of itself if the match gets over. But that was kind of that in-ring style. When you look at promo styles and you look at Hulk Hogan, the cupping of the ear, and if you're on YouTube and watching and kind of playing to the crowd and talking with your hands, a la Hollywood Hulk Hogan as a heel, and again, it is the shaping and the seeing what works and what doesn't work. And when you look at, how Hogan's trademark was posing to all four sides and cupping of the ring, I have always assumed and thought and probably more importantly heard that was kind of a collab of, because Lawler would, as a baby face, he's calling stuff, he's talking to the heel. I've been around it and I've seen it. Hey, man, pose to all four sides and this and that, and Idolmania and cupping of the ear and all that, all kind of Hogan's trademark, whether it's babyface mannerisms or heel mannerisms, are really a direct link of those two guys. And we went over the Idolmania, but Hollywood Hulk Hogan's heel persona, and you get a side-by-side of Austin Idol's heel persona, and listen to how many times Idol says Jack and how many times Hogan would throw in brother. You're going to have a little fun time walking down memory lane with those two.
I do want to ask you about your dad sort of borrowing from this Hulk Hogan video. It's his idea, so certainly he can do it again. And Jim Cornette has joked that, the rule of thumb in pro wrestling is that there's a 7-year statute of limitation on angles. So you can redo it. You just got to wait 7 years. Have you heard that before?
I have. I believe it's more than just angles. And, I'm sure kind of you're a finance guy. The 80-20 rule. You're familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
I just think it's fascinating how all that works. But I believe there's you hear about all the wrestling industry cyclical. It's cyclical. Well, I think there's two sides to that coin, Conrad. I have had thousands and thousands of miles ridden in a car, debating, discussing, looking at this. When you look at my career, I started in 86, and by 93, that's when I went to WWF. So kind of look at that frame, 93 to 01, 2000-ish. Okay. So 93, or we'll go 94 to 01. Okay. Look at that era. Look at 2002 to 7 years later, 2009 or 10. Oh, wow. Okay. 2010, Conrad, to 2017. Oh, okay. 2018 to you kind of look at, I think there is a lot to, I don't want to get into gematria. Some of my believers out there are like, damn, Double J brought out gematria. 7 is a number of completion.
Wait, what's the word you're saying there? I just need to know, is that an English word you're saying?
Google gematria.
You're going to have to spell it, bud, because I don't even know what you're saying.
Okay. I got to make sure I have to look at it. I think it's G-O. Look at you.
I mean, G-O.
M-O-T-R-I-A. Is that right? People are going,
I don't know what I'm looking at right now, bud.
Are you reading it?
Well, I think it means G-E-M-A. So
the practice of assigning a numerical value to a name, or word, or phrase by reading as a number. Sometimes no. Anyway, it's it is, what is the person, a gematria? I don't even. It's primarily used within Jewish tradition, to explore symbolism, undercover deeper insights, reveal potential relationships between words, concepts, and individuals. Anyway,
You're making up stuff. Just a minute ago, too, though, you said there's always two sides to the coin, and the business is
coin.
cyclical. I know two sides of the coin, and I know the business is cyclical. But when you started putting out words here I'd never heard before, I'm like, I'm gonna have to look that up because I think you just made up a word.
Gematria. Okay, so I don't know how to spell it, but I've heard this.
Is it like kombucha? Because I don't like that at all. I tried it; it's not for me.
I've never liked Zambucha or kombucha.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what either one of them have to do with what we're doing today, but I'm learning a whole hell of a lot.
7. Back to Jim Cornette's analogy of angles every 7 years. I do believe there is something to 7. Man, we went in a rabbit hole. I am a huge believer in that. And so, and I think if you do it inside of 7, it doesn't work. Look at I don't think there was enough time. Remember, there was the original Fabs and the new Fabs. That didn't work out. But no, I think, the recycle of 7. When you go look at Bill Dundee going to Watts, when he left Tennessee and Mole Man sent him and Terry Taylor and Rock and Roll and others, there is quite a few recycled angles, but it's 2 different territories. But it's not like Tennessee was the originator. I mean, in the wrestling industry, stuff has been redone and rehashed and retweaked over and over and over. But when you have different talent, in my opinion, it's brand new. It has the opportunity to be brand new. So I am definitely not criticizing. I get it. If it works once, who's to say it's a dumb idea to try it again? I sincerely mean that.
Well, 9 years after we do the original Terry Boulder, he is the Hulk video that we sort of previewed there with Michael St. John on the VO. Your dad does it again for Sid Vicious.
Mm-hmm.
He even has Michael St. John do the voiceover. It's almost word for word identical, the same cadence, the same flow. So clearly it worked. It didn't just work for Hulk, it worked for Sid as well. I guess that would have been what, like 87, 88?
Not long after.
Either way, we know that by that point, Hulk Hogan was the biggest star in the world. I want to ask you your opinion. You know, you're still a young guy. You're probably doing the high school and college thing. I don't even think you're wrestling just yet. When Vince really starts to go national, of course, that famously happened in January of '84. The backstory and the timing of which I have to admit I learned from reading in the Wrestling Observer obituary. Shout out to Dave. He always does a great job with those. But he specifically said that, you know, Steve Taylor, who had been doing photos for Vince and for Vern, back-channeled a message to Hulk Hogan saying that Vince wanted to meet with you. And Vince said, you know, here's the plan. And the result is you'll be the first professional wrestler to ever earn $1 million in a single year here in America. Well, that was music to Hogan's ears. Hogan had been obviously estranged from the WWF after he decided to go work on the Rocky movie against Vince's father's wishes. And he had found a home in Japan and in the AWA. But allegedly, according to the rumor and innuendo, Vern was not cutting Hulk in on the Hulk merchandise. So Hogan, after he has this new meeting and sort of promise of $1 million a year from Vince McMahon, he no-shows the sold-out Christmas night show. Well, that's all the commitment that Vince needed to see. So the very next night at Madison Square Garden, he had Bob Backlund drop the world title to the Iron Sheik. And the very following day, so the 27th, at Wrestling at the Chase in St. Louis, is where we see Hulk Hogan return to the WWF, this time as a babyface, wearing the yellow. He's got a headband on. He's coming out to the Rocky theme, Eye of the Tiger. And we know in less than a month, he's going to be the world champion. He's going to beat the Iron Sheik, that damn dirty Iron Sheik, right there in Madison Square Garden. An iconic photo, an iconic moment in wrestling history. January 24th, 1984. It's clear very quickly after this that Vince is trying to make a play to go completely national. There's lots of rumor and innuendo that he wanted, Hulk to win the AWA title, and maybe Vince was allegedly trying to bribe Harley Race to have Hogan beat Harley Race for the NWA title. Vince is full steam ahead with a national plan. And I know you're not yet in the business necessarily, but you're around it and you're a fan of it and you're keeping up with it. Did you have the type of relationship with your dad where back then or in the years since you could have asked him about what he felt about Vince sort of, breaking the party lines, if you will, of the understanding and the agreement that all these territory promoters had all these years? What did your dad think about going against the grain and going out on his own to go national?
That's a good question. Like, because in we'll call it 84, I'm a junior in high school. He wouldn't have shared like the down and dirty of it. I mean, the stories that I heard firsthand were the Savage department, Jesus, okay, the Savage departure, the Jimmy Hart departure. Those were really big ones. But kind of that national expansion, and from the very early age, when I would start to ask questions, because Conrad, I think like a lot of kids in the early 80s, and I got magazines, but I didn't. It was trying to wrap my head around. It's so common knowledge today, but wrapping my head around kind of the territory system and understanding that, oh, guys are in and out, and oh, Lawler lives here and Dundee lives here, but man, these guys are in and out, in and out. Now they're going to work Florida, and they're going to go work Don Owen, and they're going to work California, go to Japan and Puerto Rico, all the different places. That really fascinated me, like the business of it. But like one of the earliest discussions I had with my father and my grandmother was, they used to call it the Tennessee territory we're in here. It is, we were always, or had the mentality, the underdog, because the populations of our town, we'll call it Memphis, Louisville, Evansville, Nashville, those were the four kind of pillars of it, were not any close to Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Boston. You just kind of look at that, or Charlotte, Richmond, Greensboro, the Carolinas, go out to Texas, San Antonio, hell, my dad, I remember saying, hey, they run Dallas in spot shows. That's how many people are out there, and Paul Bosch, and just all the, so I was always under pressure. Our territory had to run lean and mean, our socioeconomic circumstances. And so when he went national, I got to just, my earliest, and we'll kind of progress through here if you want, but my earliest ones were, folks, as my old man would say, we have to stay focused on putting out a TV, and we got great relationships. And truth be known, we kept Wave TV in Louisville and all the different, stayed focused on that. And so we're going to do what we do, and they're going to do what they do. So them running in that first kind of loop, we've talked about the Great American Bash in Memphis and how bad that bombed, and WWE, their first kind of loop in the Tennessee area when they were doing pretty big business other places, didn't do so hot. And so my old man always wanted to stay focused. Now this, you're asking about when Vince decided to go national, what was my dad's thoughts? To my knowledge, he just said, hey, we need to focus on what we're doing and let them focus on what they're doing. They're not going to run Nashville 52 weeks a year. They're not going to run Memphis. At the most, they're going to come, maybe twice a year, if that, probably not. I could remember when my old man, Buddy Lee Attractions, had the account here in Nashville at the Municipal Auditorium. This is probably 87, 88, 89, a little bit later. They signed a 4 show with an option for 2 more. So they're going to run Nashville 4 times a year. That was an issue for my old man. He goes, okay, so they're going to be on sale or close to on sale, a big part of it. And that was a huge concern. But for the most part, Conrad, my earliest memories were he basically said, let's stay the course.
Let's talk about the decision to use Hulk as the guy to go national. It's been said that one of Vince's other ideas would have been Dusty Rhodes, but even Meltzer agrees that that was probably 10 years too late. If Vince was trying to go national in the mid 70s, he couldn't have found a better solution than Dusty Rhodes. Other names kicked around, of course, would have been Jimmy Snuka, who certainly had reliability issues, to say the least. Sergeant Slaughter. He was also one of Vince's top baby faces. But other big names were guys like Kerry Von Erich, who maybe by that point had started to develop a bit of a reputation for being unreliable. But who else could have even been that national guy Would it have been a Ricky Steamboat, a Magnum TA, a Barry Windham? Or are you a homer? Do you think it could have been Jerry Lawler? Who could have been if it wasn't Hulk? Who do you think your dad would have went with? That's maybe a better way of saying it. If your dad was the guy making the play to go national, who would your dad have went with? Would he have went with Lawler or someone else?
And this is where to kind of walk down. That's why sometimes I steer away from Mount Rushmore discussions, because it's all subjective and opinionated and timing. And that's why you can slice and dice it any way you want. But, and I'll call this the modern era, when we transition from, local TV to cable television. You can call it divine intervention, pathways crossing. You can look at all the famous rock stars. If they didn't have the right producer at the right time and present them, either they wrote the song or had the right song that was written presented to them. I just think the magic in Vince and Hulk, had Hulk not been available, yes, the business still would have gone national. I just believe the booking philosophy would have probably been different, Conrad, because you named all, to me, the kind of top options, and Lawler was 6 foot, incredible mouthpiece. Out of all those guys you named, I think he's the ability to talk was I think in a lot of ways far surpassed Hogan, but not in the hype way. And that's why I just think the combination of a blonde-haired, catchphrase talking, 6'7", tanned up, Hulkamania, had all the pieces of Idol and Lawler and Hogan. And you got to remember, in my opinion, and we kind of glossed over it, but Hogan forging his way territory and then having the ability to go to Japan, and folks that say, oh, Hogan could never work. Well, he may not be able to do what we call classic, what we call today, whether it's flips or 5-star or whatever it is. Go watch some Japan matches and watch Hogan move, and watch some early Hogan as a heel work with Andre, and look at, he literally learned his trade and craft. That's why without Vince or without Hogan, you take one of the two. I just think, yeah, sure, it'd been national, and I think wildly successful. I just don't think there is a substitute. I think that's part of the magic. And I think at the end of the day, I think that's why, in a lot of ways, we are doing this podcast today, because I think that is the importance of those two teaming up and having the vision. And shit, if Hogan didn't have the worth ethic, I'm not even sure we'd be doing this podcast either, because the grind and everything. Now, the sacrifices he's made physically on his body, on his marriages, and on his family life, and probably friendships and relationships. Nothing was getting in the way of Hulk and Hulkamania, and that was him loading up the wagon. And those guys in the late 80s. When I tell you the stories of fighting to get on the Hogan card because they were running 2 and 3 shows a night, he was the Pied Piper. I remember Kurt telling me, Henning, he'd come to Memphis and talk about, I'm on the Hogan loop for the next 3. It's hard to put into words, and it's a different era and different time in so many ways. But Conrad, I don't think there is a replacement in that booking philosophy. And that means top babyface with the heel factory. It could have been a different philosophy, so to speak.
Hey, I do want to ask you, when we're talking about, the success of Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan and the WWF, it's easy to think about how quickly it happened, or easy to forget how quickly it happened. As a reminder, Hogan wins the belt at the end of January 1984. 13 months later is when they're going to do, or 14 months later is when they're going to do WrestleMania. And along the way, during that 14 months, they're going to pick up their first toy deal. They're going to pick up MTV. They're going to pick up NBC. They're going to pick up Cyndi Lauper. They're going to pick up Mr. T. A lot of our listeners, they weren't around for the A-Team. Can you give everybody sort of an idea of where Mr. T was with regard to television here in America, or just pop culture in general?
What was the show? Help me out. What was I don't want to call it a reality show, but it was like a bouncer show that broke him. Because I can remember in high school, that show that kind of broke Mr. T before the A-Team. And I don't know what it was, or I may be getting, but anyway, he was, again, very much prior to cable television. So you had 4 channels to choose from. He was a legit larger than life persona, and then casted that TV show. And it just, in so many ways, Vince's vision of putting professional wrestling, this is where kind of roll your eyes. Well, no, it's not really roll your eyes, because the territory promoters, and my father being one of them, yeah, they had Joe Louis back in the day, and they had different athletes and different things, but literally getting Ali and Liberace and making him, the super mega event, and none of this happens without cable television. I get that. And that's why I'm saying there's so many layers to it, but the vision to go national, and Hogan being able to carry the weight and go on and do promos, and he could do a promo that could do Mr. T's. Mr. T just had to say a few words, but Mr. T was a big time pop culture, very unique celebrity that fit right in the crosshairs. I mean, a bullseye of being aligned with professional wrestling, and it just clicked. Cyndi Lauper, New Yorker, brash, that just fit in so many, just fit professional wrestling. Having the idea of the word WrestleMania. Oh, wow. And you got to remember, all across America, Crockett's were hot. Texas was hot. Tennessee was hot. New York territory was hot. Like every territory. So all these homes across America in all the different territories were doing big television numbers and successful territory business. And then all of a sudden you create that one big funnel and WrestleMania. Oh, and you had the JYD from Louisiana, and you had Hacksaw from Louisiana, and you had Hercules Hernandez. You had a Dallas star. You had this star. Oh, Savage was just here. Now he's up there. I'm jumping around timelines, but it was a true superstar collab that just clicked. You go back. I just saw recently that We Are the World, Conrad, that video, and the Live Aid or whatever it was. But you had the pop stars of every music genre in one room singing one song. In a lot of ways, just the collab of all these territory stars on one show, and Hogan leading the charge with all the marching and the vision behind it. It just clicked on every cylinder. It was pop culture in the 80s.
The name of the show you were trying to think of is Games People Play, hosted by Bryant Gumbel. It aired from 1980 to 1981. It was a 60-minute show, but there was an episode where Mr. T won the America's Best Bouncer, which is sometimes mispronounced as World's Toughest Bouncer. But he won that competition twice on the show, and he donated his $3,000 prize to charity. And Sylvester Stallone sees this and casts him for Rocky 3.
Okay.
The very same Rocky that Thunder Lips, Hulk Hogan, would make his appearance. So after we know that, after WrestleMania or after Rocky 3, Hulkamania is born. Well, so is the A-Team. So at that very moment in time, Mr. T is about as pop culture as it gets. He didn't have the background of, say, The Rock with a wrestling background, but it was that sort of, he does one thing and it leads to another, and it explodes and it leads to another. And sometimes, in our real life, one thing leads to another, and then it's time for a hot tag for our wiener. Let's talk about your hogs, boys. I'm talking about Blue Chew and how you can get that dick so hard. That's what Blue Chew's all about. It's not just a tablet. It's a cheat code for your gimmick, daddy. They want to get your gimmick stronger, harder, and longer lasting, like somebody gave your downstairs a Paulie Dangerously pep talk in a gym membership. I don't think he ever had both of those. But either way, Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for better sex. I popped a Blue Chew on my way to StarCast, and now TSA in Huntsville calls me sir during the pat downs. Roll Tide. Guys, this isn't just about performance. This is about your legacy or your third legacy. Give her group chat something to talk about. Nothing makes you more of a legend than a little Blue Chew. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. As always, you can get your first month of Blue Chew free, which is definitely in Jeff Jarrett's budget. Just use the promo code MyWorld at checkout and pay $5 for shipping. That's it. That's less than picture money. Join Blue Chew's mission to upgrade humanity one thrust at a time. Head on over to BlueChew.com for details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. We're honoring Hulk Hogan today, and we appreciate you joining us here. Jeff, we were just talking about the success of the WWF and Hulk Hogan as a draw. So I wanted to read you something from the obituary from Dave Meltzer's Wrestling Observer newsletter. He wrote, while one could argue that Jim Lundos and Bruno Sammartino were bigger in their era, or at least in their key regions, because Hogan came at a time with more larger arenas and went all over the country, he drew far more crowds of 10,000 during the course of his career than any other wrestler who ever lived. In 1984, he set the all-time record for the most 10,000 plus crowds in a year in history. He broke that record in 85 and again in 86. While he never broke that record again, he was number one through 1991, the last year he worked mostly full-time. And in the later years, he cut back on dates to spend more time at home and still took months off for movies and was still easily number one. I mean, that's the real story. You know, when you boil it down, wrestling today cannot be compared to wrestling of yesteryear because of the change in society with the television rights proposition, with the entire world becoming a smaller place thanks to this thing called the internet. There's now a global opportunity. I mean, online merchandising, it is a whole new ball game now from a lot of different reasons. But one of the things that I think is a tried and true formula is who can inspire people to leave their homes. I'm going to leave my house. I'm going to drive to an arena. I'm going to pay for parking. I'm going to pay for overpriced concessions. I'm probably going to hit the merch stand. And then I'm going to go pay to sit in a seat and respectfully watch something I could watch at home on my own couch. And fans paid in droves to see Hulk Hogan in person. I think that's really one of the things that keeps Hogan in our hearts and minds so much is he was positioned as more than just wrestling. I mean, I think there was a time where these days we all understand that people use the phrase WWE and wrestling interchangeably, like they do MMA or UFC. But in that day, I even wonder, I don't think people were saying the WWF yet. I think they were saying, I'm going to see Hulk Hogan. Now, Hulk Hogan's at the WWF show, and a lot of people were becoming familiar with the WWF, but I would argue they were becoming familiar with the WWF because of Hulk Hogan, because Hulk Hogan's on the cover of Sports Illustrated, because he's on Saturday Night Live, because you would see him on the action figures at the toy aisle, because he had rock and wrestling cartoons, because he's on MTV. They see him through all these different things, and then they'll check out Saturday night's main event and see the actual matches. But Hulk Hogan, in a weird way, became the masthead, not just for the WWF, but for professional wrestling, I think, at large when it comes to the mainstream. Would you agree with that?
Conrad, we could almost end the podcast there, or that's like if we talk, if we end it now or go another hour, like the kind of the funnel of it all, or the top line, in my opinion, is just that. In that, when you like, I think the Rocky III movie, and I love Sylvester Stallone movies, the Rambos. I just, that, you know, the dude was uncanny in his ability to, write and produce and star. But when you go back and watch, you can't do it. If you are from another planet and you drop in and watch Rocky III for the first time with no real context, I think in so many ways, Hogan and Sylvester it was the scene stealer of the movie. Yes, the whole series is good, the movie's good, all that kind of stuff. But Hogan kind of did the scene stealing over and over and over. And I think his size, but his charisma, the it factor was always there. You know, like the it factor, my dad would have never been attracted to bringing him in had he not had the it factor. It was just a unique persona, aura, charisma that he had. And just what you said, Conrad, just yesterday on the water, buddy of mine, there was two of them. He had a female with him, and they are both, I'll just say, SVP and EVP level. I'll leave it at that. But they asked specifically about this, and my buddy, I'm like, hey man, you still don't really follow it. I'm laughing, cutting up. Because, no. But he's like, man, Hulk Hogan is wrestling. That is what I believe the general thought across the globe. I don't think just in the United States. And I think timing is an enormous part of that. But when you become mainstream in America, you're really mainstream global. I think our not, and I don't want to say just our politics, but our politics, Hollywood and our entertainment, the financial world, and everything that goes with it, people will have their eyes on America. And when Hogan, through all of what we just said, that wrestling was red hot in the territory system, and he funneled it all together. I think that goes a lot of times missed. The Rocky III, Vince having the vision to go touring nationally, where it wasn't an album that came out like the Stones or whatever it may be. They broke an act, being the WWF. Well, who broke that act? Hulk. He was the centerpiece, and he introduced to so many people around the globe sports entertainment. We didn't call it that yet, and we didn't even call it the WWF at the time. Hulk Hogan was really the lead act that broke so many things.
What was your relationship like with Hulk Hogan? Like in modern days, like if he was still with us and you were going to check out Real American Freestyle at the end of next month in Cleveland, and you bumped into the Hulkster, what would y'all's interaction be like?
Oh, he'd probably, I mean, we would text from time to time for the last, I don't know how long, what birthday in my phone, I remember birthdays for the most part. But I'll say this, Hulk liked to talk about my old man. And I think that was always kind of a connecting piece. He had good thoughts and bad thoughts about TNA. He had good thoughts and bad thoughts about our time together in WCW. But for the most part, and this is where Hogan, for better or worse, always liked to be one of the boys. And I say that because he really wasn't. He far outgrew just your ordinary average talent way back. But I think he liked to stay connected or grounded. And I think that's why he liked to talk when we would have conversations so much more. And he would, I'm joking, but he would always forget. Now, what was Eddie's last name? Yeah, the promoter guy. And I'd say Eddie Martin. Yeah. Now, wasn't he related to you? Yep, Hulk, he was. But just that. I mean, that's what it would be. Just a simple, casual conversation about, his daughter Brooke and the music business. And, we from time to time we'd have conversations. He knew I was connected to lots of music folks, and we would have casual conversations. And I'd tell him music business is equally as hard as professional wrestling. But at the end of the day, you got to grind in music, just like you do in wrestling. He understood, obviously, that part of it, the grind.
Jeff, I'm not asking this to be to pick a fight. I'm trying to learn and understand. So help me understand.
Here we go.
When you said, Hulk had good and bad feelings about TNA, I mean this respectfully. Why would he hold that against you? Wouldn't it have been Dixie at that point? Like, we've talked about enough on the show that, yes, you had ownership, but you were a minority owner. So kind of what Dixie says goes. And the timeline of all that, it's almost like you're sort of getting pieced out when Hogan and Bischoff are coming in anyway. Why would he feel weird about you with regard to TNA at all? Or are you talking about the first rendezvous with the whole Japanese angle?
No, with all due respect, I think, look, he's got ears just like I do. And he was trained in the school of professional wrestling that at the end of the day, you're working for an audience of one. When he worked for Louis Tillett, he worked for Louis Tillett. When he worked for a Fuller in Alabama, he worked for Fuller. When he worked for Jerry Jarrett, he worked for Jerry Jarrett, and so on and so on. When he worked for Inoki and Vern and Vince Sr. and Vince Jr., and I'll call it, the suits at AOL Time Warner, whatever it may be. When he came into TNA, obviously he was at a completely different stature, and he knew it. Look, I think one of Hogan's most successful traits he had was reading the room and understanding it. This is my opinion, but I believe we're kind of business animals, Conrad, and I think you can relate to this. A lot of things are said by the unspoken words. I think Dixie hired him under a set of circumstances. I think in Dixie's mindset was Jeff and his team have gotten all this credit. I hadn't got any credit. We did this, 1 hour, 2 hours, blah, 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 and got it to a certain level. And I get it. She wanted to prove to her father that she could do this. So if Jeff went left, I'm going to go right. And I think Hogan working for the audience of one, which would have been his boss, Dixie, I'm going to make some decisions. And I'll never forget at WWE when Hogan looked at me kind of and said, yeah, man, I don't know what's going on. I'm happy for you. I think it was after, when would that have been? Hall of Fame next year. I'd seen him backstage at some kind of event, and he took kind of a shot of, yeah, maybe there is another match in me, because I damn sure don't want it to end on that TNA crap. And I just thought to myself, bite my lip. You created that TNA crap. And I don't want to go down that road because if there's any one person that I believe could have radically changed the course of TNA's direction in a very positive way, I think if he would have put his foot down to Dixie on a couple of certain instances, I think things would have been really different. But hey, she was paying him not good money, but great money for the amount of work. And I really believe that as time went on and the results that he got and just kind of how things went and the way it ended, you don't have to tell him or Eric. They didn't have a successful run. And I don't want this podcast to kind of head
Jeff,
down.
let me ask you about this, because I'm fascinated we're getting down this rabbit hole. And I'm going to keep it positive here, too. I want to pivot to kind of something else. But when we're talking about you and TNA, like, it feels like to me, again, I'm trying to imagine that I'm the real life Terry Bollea saying to you, hey, maybe there is one more match in me. I don't want it to end on that TNA crap. I almost wonder, was he saying that to you? This is years after you're both out of TNA, by the way.
Yes.
That in my head, I almost feel like he would have been saying that to try to endear himself to you, because he knows it didn't come to a beautiful end for you either. And in the end, it was an ugly mess with Dixie. But I'm wondering, when you hear sort of TNA slander, since it was your baby, even if it didn't wind up being your baby forever, do you still have that ownership? Because you referenced it as a shot. And the way I heard it, I think if I was you, and I'm not, so I don't have your shared experience, but I would have thought, oh, he's trying to butter me up about how, Dixie screwed us both, or whatever our perception may be. But you took it as, oh, he's shitting on my baby. I want to hear you talk about that.
So at the end of the day, and this is where, oh, Conrad, you've heard me say it. I try to impress upon my kids or anybody I come in contact with. I mean this. If you're listening to this podcast, and if there's anything that you ever take away from a podcast in your personal life, it would be in all of your relationships, over communicate over and over. Me and him never had that opportunity to discuss. There is no doubt in my mind that he knew that 3 months, maybe 1 month, that him and not even Eric, because Eric kind of came along later. He was put in, he was the wrestling guy that took Jeff's place. There's no doubt in my mind. He knew that. Did we ever discuss it? No, but that was exactly, they leaned on him for wrestling decisions. They leaned on him for talent decisions. They leaned on him for vision decisions. Let's take the show on the road. Let's do this, do that. I think all of that. And I think, and maybe I may be wrong because we didn't over communicate and have this conversation. I took it as, hey man, that's the softest I'm going to get. The TNA, my TNA run, because you got to look at his success and his track record. Conrad, he was successful in Alabama, in Tennessee, in AWA, in New Japan, in obviously WWF, in WCW. Like his track record, Midas. Like, I don't think there really is a talent that had the back to back, not base hits, not home runs, grand slams over. So when he got into TNA and the level that was at, it didn't take long. And so I think that was his way of, hey man, didn't work out the way I wanted it to. Maybe I'm going to get another shot. And so I don't think he took it at me. I think he was taking it at TNA, and maybe it was at Dixie, probably, as you sit here and process it through, taking a shot at her. I know in other conversations, he clearly saw Dixie's inability to grasp what the core of our business was about. There's no doubt. I mean, yeah, we had those conversations for sure. And I don't want to get negative here, Connie, but that, you know, you kind of got in there and pried in there. That's how I think he looked at, man, I'm the Midas touch man. And that was some shit because it just ended and it ended bad too.
Well, this episode is not going to end bad. We've got more Hulk Hogan coming up, but we've got to take a break. We'll be right back. Hey, listen, guys, a lot of uncertainty in our financial world these days. One thing I'm pretty certain of, your house is worth more than what you paid for it. So if your money's been tight, hey, the solution you've been looking for has been hiding in your house. It wasn't in your junk drawer. It wasn't in your basement. It wasn't in your attic. It's in the equity in your house. According to the Zillow Home Index, the value of your home is still going up year over year, which means you're probably sitting on a boatload of untapped equity. And I know what you're thinking. Maybe you're one of those guys who got one of those great COVID rates way back when, and you've been hanging on to that. Well, if you've been struggling with your credit card debt, man, what are you waiting for? It's up to you how you pay it back. Once you go into debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. And I really encourage you to take a look at this. What I really think is most important is how much money's coming in and how much money's going out every month. And if I can have more money at the end of the month, instead of having more month at the end of the money, well, sign me up. That's exactly what we helped Andrew do in Tennessee. He had some credit card debt he needed to pay off, and he wanted to knock out getting a new roof and some new floors. What are some things around your house you'd like to do? Is there something you said once upon a time, hey, one day I'd like to, hey, someday we want to? We can make someday today and do it with cheaper monthly payments. You see, my man Andrew, instead of taking out new debt to do those upgrades, he just came to savewithconrad.com. He used the equity that he's built up in his home over the years. We hooked him up with a cash out refinance. We call it a debt consolidation because we knocked out some of his debt and saved him over $400 a month. Yeah, and he's still got a new roof and new floors. So let me recap. We got rid of all his credit card debt. We got him a new roof. We got him the new floors. He skipped 2 house payments, and his payments went down. Yeah, over $400 a month. Now, he didn't just save $400 one time. He's going to save that each and every month. We're talking $5,000 a year he'll save that otherwise he would have worked for that money, paid taxes on it, and then just given it away. But if you know you can get a better rate than what you've got on your credit cards, and you know you can get a greater tax deduction because the interest you pay on your mortgage is tax deductible, but the interest you pay on your credit cards is not. And you can skip your next 2 house payments, which means no payments in July or August. You're done until September. How about a summer vacation from house payments? We can do it for you right now at savewithconrad.com. Let my team run the numbers. We want to hear from you. Do you want a pool? Do you want to put in a home theater? Do you need a new kitchen? Do you need a new tile shower? What are you looking for to upgrade your house? What would that one thing be? Let's take care of that and get it to you with cheaper monthly payments because we knocked out all your credit card debt. And did I mention when you work with the team at savewithconrad.com, you also get our year 3 guarantee. You see, experts all seem to agree that interest rates are going to improve over the next couple of years. And when that happens, you're going to be primed. Here's what I mean. I don't want you to wait until the rates fall to start saving money. What that says differently as, I'm just going to keep overpaying for the foreseeable future and just hope something gets better. That's not the best plan. The best plan is to get the best deal for your family today and give yourself the peace of mind of knowing you're not wasting money later. And that's exactly what our year 3 guarantee does. We're going to go ahead and start saving you money today with the rates where they are. And if the rates improve over the next 3 years, we'll refinance you again with no new lender fees. So you get to lock in a much cheaper monthly payment right now. But then when the rates improve, call your boy. I want to be your mortgage advisor for life. And I mean that. You see, at savewithconrad.com, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. I don't want you to feel ashamed or concerned about me seeing that you've had struggles. Hell, who hasn't? I've seen over 100,000 credit reports in my career. I've seen it all, and I know how to fix it. I know how to get you there. So I just want to hear from you. What are your goals, and how can I help? I'm going to get to work at savewithconrad.com. You're going to love working with my team. You might even wind up talking to my dad. My dad's part of the team. Come be a part of the family with your family at savewithconrad.com and find out how much money you can save. Andrew, who listens to this podcast, got rid of his credit card debt, got a new roof, got some new floors, and saved $400 a month. You can be our next success story. You just need to go right now to savewithconrad.com, NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com, or shoot me an email. It's conrad@savewithconrad.com.
Okay, so Jeff, I do want to talk a little bit about the shift in the way the Hulk Hogan character was presented. You know, we've spent a lot of time talking about the heel turn, but I actually want to talk about before the heel turn, sort of the latter years of that first WWF run. In the first several years, he is the, easygoing, sunny, positive demeanor guy in the most likable possible way. But when George Booker or George Scott is going to be fired as the Booker, the Hulk Hogan character, based on the way you would hear Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan talk about it, is almost more of like an anti-hero. So he's going to be involved in some things that, well, technically you might even see the heel's point of view. I mean, even the breakup with him and Savage, the way he's sort of crying sour milk or spilt milk about Sid Justice and him beating him at the Royal Rumble. And then Hulk, once he's eliminated, pulling a baby face out, like he does become a different version of the baby face. And then later we would see the heel turn. And so now we've seen sort of all the different iterations. They enjoyed a lot of success in that Savage era, the late 80s, the early 90s, say 88, 89, 90 on. That's sort of that tweener anti-hero Hogan character. Before that, just pure white meat babyface. But then the NWO Hollywood Hogan, he did all three of those really well.
Cool.
And it's rare that you can find someone who plays a heel as well as they play a babyface and vice versa. Like most everyone listening to this knows the respect and appreciation that you and I have for Ric Flair. But I think we would also agree he's fine as a babyface. We love him as a heel. With Hogan, I could go either way. Can you think of another talent like that? And which of the three did you feel like, if you could pick one, was Hulk at his best?
Oh, man, Conrad, you talk about going in a rabbit hole with Double J here, because you called him an anti-hero, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I always viewed, and again, I can only kind of draw off my experiences and how I see things, but let's say that early run of Hulkamania, if you will, when Hulk came in and got the belt, pardon this, I don't say he's one of the boys, but he was the top baby face and had that. Well, about 3 years into that or 4 years into that, before we get into the anti-hero, this is where, oh boy, I think professional wrestling, this is right up there at the top, if not the top, of why our form of entertainment is just different, because we blur the lines. And yeah, John Wayne can play this character and that character, or Tom Cruise or Clint Eastwood. It's all character based, and that's, it's the movies, and we can differentiate. Okay, he's Superman there, but he's Dean Cain there, whatever it may be. And wrestling, it's always kind of the blurred lines in a lot of ways. By the time he became the anti-hero, Conrad, I always looked at it that there really was Hogan and others. Like, it was Hulk Hogan and the rest of the WWF. That's how it was positioned. And that he was the king, and he was on his throne, and everybody else was his subjects. And so what do most kings end up their downfall from? Paranoia. I'm saying that you don't cross him. You don't even think about crossing him. And if you do, the king's not going to react. He's going to act and be proactive and this and that. I think a lot of that anti-hero was, and this is just my opinion, I think the reality was Vince treated him as, limousine, and I know Warrior came along and got one, but, Hogan was treated completely different than all the other talent not long after he got there. And then that became the reality. And I think that blended over into George Scott gone. And then Vince looked at it, his creative, and whether it was Bruce and Pat or just Vince, whatever it was, they booked Hogan differently, and they booked him as the king of his kingdom. And I think that's the natural kind of progression of the character. And so, again, I'm going to say that when you look at maybe a little longer than a 7-year run, but when you kind of look at the cyclical part of things, you had the baby face, you had the anti-hero, and that anti-hero was a little paranoid. Then all of a sudden, Turner, Bischoff, I'm going to put Nitro on. The perfect real life heel is the guy from the invading territory. Because remember, I don't think WCW or the NWA, if you will, they were really looked at as a national company. I think they were a regional superstation NWA. Well, Eric and Ted and all them, hey, let's go national. And I'm not saying they weren't national beforehand, but let's go national with Nitro and competition. And then all of a sudden, their main heel was the King coming from up north. And oh my gosh, Hall and Nash. So I just think the progression of it. So I like all of them. I'm a natural. I like the heel. I think Hogan as the leader of the NWO in the heel turn and the immediate electricity and infusion and the just the explosion into the Attitude Era was obviously I lived it, was really cool. But I'm going to go back to, so I like the anti-hero. I really like the heel turn. But when you see the genesis of a guy who had told, and, you see it in Nashville often, this guy, Jelly Roll, everybody thinks, where'd this guy come from? Jelly Roll has been grinding for 20-something years, selling CDs out of his trunk of his car. I mean, you talk about coming up the hard way. And he's one of many in the music business that played bars and scratched and clawed and got kicked out and, canceled from his label and all the different stories. But all of a sudden, Hogan bounced around. Yes, success after success after success. But when preparation met the opportunity, Hogan was ready to put the company on his back and work his ass off and succeed. So I'm more of a early Hulkamania. I've got a shitload of respect for that, Conrad, because you talk about the grind. Just think of a guy who wouldn't have wanted to work that hard and make all the appearances and make all the towns. Vince would have been looking at a different business, but Hogan made all the towns, all the promos, sacrificed everything. And so it was a major part of the growth of our business that we are living today. You're mute.
There's really only one other guy who maintained a schedule like that. We're probably thinking of the same guy, Ric Flair. I mean, Ric Flair as the NWA champion, his schedule was unbelievable. And I think it's interesting that when you think about the top stars of the 1980s, I think depending on who you ask, you're usually going to hear Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair as 1A and 1B. And I think the parallels of their lives, where they've both had, the physical wear and tear and physical complications, but also just the real life, tragedy that they've both had in their lives. There's been a lot of parallels, and it's no wonder considering the sacrifices that those guys paid, both on their body and their personal relationships.
You got a question for me? You just want me to comment on that? Because well, and I'll say this. When you look, and I think a lot of ways, I have always said professional wrestling, a professional wrestler and a sports entertainment are really one and the same. But when you look at the parallels of those two guys, Hogan was the sports entertainer, Rick was
The wrestler.
the professional wrestler. And you kind of when you look at that, and I think both of those guys at the end of the day, and I had a boatload of guidance on this. So, but we see it often, and you see it in wrestling. Hell, I see it in lawyer and bankers and all that. It's hey, that's your vocation. But I think both guys, as time went on, Richard Fleer became the Nature Boy. Terry Bollea came Hulk.
Yeah.
And I think for the wrestling fans, that can be a huge bonus. For the family and the friends and the relationships of day to day,
That's pretty bad.
can be tragic.
Yeah.
And yeah, the parallels of those two in that's the thing. And a lot of folks will say, oh, those two guys, they literally sacrificed their lives for the industry and to be those two
icons. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, no doubt.
And that's the point I was trying to make, is I think it is that incredible sacrifice that made them the stars they are. They are the icons they are because they never missed a date. They were there for all of it, not some of it, but all of it. And when I think about, great Hulk Hogan moments that transcended what was going on in the rest of the wrestling world, I think right at the top of the list for me is not the first WrestleMania, but WrestleMania 3, Hogan and Andre. Now, you started wrestling, of course, in 86. March of 87 is when this one goes down. What do you remember as a kid thinking about, or a young guy in the business thinking about WrestleMania 3 and the way the story was built? Because respectfully, not everybody had Google back then. So when they said Andre the Giant had never been slammed, you would have no way of knowing he'd been slammed hundreds of times. If they hadn't have told us that Hogan and Andre have never faced, you would forget that they had already wrestled Shea Stadium for the WWF and a bunch of other territories. And of course, the whole nobody's ever beaten Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant was undefeated. He's never lost a match, even though he lost matches in the WWF. It was a different time, but I think the pop culture and the attention to mainstream for that one, I mean, it felt like it was a big movie premiere. It felt like it was that big. It felt box office, Andre and Hogan. What did you think as a young guy in the business of WrestleMania 3 and how big that match is now with the benefit of hindsight?
So 2 is when they had it in the different locations.
That's right.
Yeah. So and 1 was before I broke in. So I'm not going to put all 3 of them together, but my overarching thing, Conrad, and I'll kind of bring it into a little bit of today's modern world. The thing that was very much impressed upon me in that, and again, my upbringing, as a, you know, I wouldn't call it a young boy, but I was the rookie or whatever. Just sit over there and shut up and listen. That was impressed upon me. But the essence of our industry is the promotable factor. That it doesn't matter. We're literally writing a story. Oh, you can't get on TV and lie. Now wait a minute. You're calling it a lie, but Superman, and you can give all the silly analogies, he's really not a superhero, but we're promoting him as such. And yeah, just so the essence of what professional wrestling is that we are promoting an emotion that we're going to, what's Gorilla's indestructible object, but I don't get that thing, but just the wordsmithing and the promoting and the match of the century, and just those are the things that impressed upon me on, okay, I'm in Memphis or Louisville and we're doing a couple of thousand people, and they're up in Detroit on this Sunday afternoon, and there is 93,000 people. Did it really matter that there was only whatever it was, Conrad, 78, 70? Like, the people that get it wrapped up, and more power to them. I want them to argue and debate and throw get your all at one another, because that means they care. I can't do nothing to stop it. Matter of fact, it's all a part of the business. But the lessons I learned as a kid of watching Vince McMahon promote Hulk Hogan as this top babyface, and the box office records that they did week after week, month after month, year after year. Okay, that's how it's done. I mean, there's a Apple list right now of the top 100 songs. My buddy out here yesterday he mastered 18 of the 100, Conrad, and you just go, okay, this guy does something right. Out of all the songs streamed over the last 10 years on Apple Music, he's got 20%. Like, all right, dude, this guy's got it. So when you look at success, model success, and think about it and make it your own and all that, but when you look about WrestleMania 1, 2, and 3, in a lot of ways, that was kind of the groundswell of going from regional to national. The track record speaks for itself. I mean, though the promotional mindset is what I believe in so many ways is the essence of our industry.
We're talking, of course, about the incredible Hulk Hogan and the importance of WrestleMania 3. My first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 5. I absolutely love that story of Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. I know Randy Savage is one of your all-time favorites, and Bruce Pritchard would actually say that was his favorite WWF angle of all time.
Wow.
You're still young in the business. Obviously, Randy is a guy you'd kept an eye on since he was in Memphis. Now he's a mega power with Hulk Hogan, and then of course we would see the mega powers explode at WrestleMania 5. That's a record pay-per-view that wouldn't be broken for, like, I don't know, till Rock Austin in 2001. I mean, it's forever before they break that one. Talk to me a little bit about what you felt about the Savage Hogan feud.
So Randy, you know, very, him and my old man were tight. And I heard all the stories, and that's when literally my grandfather and my dad and others were carrying guns in their cars because Randy's running outlaw or opposition. And so Savage was, quote unquote, I mean, the real bad guy around here. And he was running a promotion and trying to take away our livelihood, and then transition into him and my father having this relationship that lasted till both of their passed, till Randy's passing, that he came in and worked. And then, you know, it's not that long after he came in and worked for my old man that he gets a call. And this is where you just kind of look at, and that's why there's so many reasons I respect Randy and was a big fan of it. But I mean, he went to old man and said, hey, I got my call, and I'm going to Vince, but I'm going to work out as long as you need. And I'm putting Lawler over right in the middle of the ring. Now, we just kind of talked about Hogan jumping ship, and there was some justification in a way, if you want, but Randy came to the guy that he ran opposition against and looked my old man and said, I'm going.
And guess what? I'm going to do what needs to be done. And he put Lawler over in cage matches or lose or leave town, whatever it was, on the loop out. And then Randy goes up there and you watch his success. And this is a big part, I believe, that in a lot of ways that, Dusty is not 6'8", and Lawler is certainly not, a tall guy. And the Von Erichs were big guys. But Hogan was the first, quote unquote, and I don't want to say the first, but Bob Backlund had a certain size and Bruno, but Hogan was the monster babyface. And he ushered that era into me a lot of ways. And so he's running high and everything. And then all of a sudden you see Randy, and Randy's not 6'8". I think my height, they're a little bit more. I don't call him the little guy either, but he brought in his style and his charisma and he gave me as a talent a lot of hope that, okay, you don't, because in the late 80s, you just kind of look at that era of it was a big guy, and Vince was a big guy deal, and all of that went with it. And so Randy going up against the biggest box office attraction in the business at the time, and then setting those records, I think that spoke volumes to so many of the talent that were breaking in the 80s and 90s, that Randy Savage is on top with Hogan. And what got him there, in a lot of things, but his work ethic and his ability to tell stories with Hulk.
As a fan, did you ever see a Hulk Hogan match in person? Like, did you ever go to an arena and see a Hulk Hogan match?
A WWF, God, did
like
I?
85, 86, 87, 88, none of that?
Because there was a, they came to town, and I'm trying to think. No, I did not see it. No.
So the first time you're in the building during a Hogan entrance is when you're in WCW, and that's when he's doing Hollywood Hogan?
Yep.
What was it like? Like, I know that sounds silly, but you'll appreciate this. Whenever I meet somebody, like when I was in Waterloo, I had multiple conversations about this with people that I don't usually spend time with, but they wanted to talk about Ric Flair's last match. And I had multiple people over the course of the weekend recognize that you were the person that made that match and story happen. It sort of really revolved around you. But even that night, I had one person who said, man, it was like another gear. I don't know if it came through on TV, but if you were in the building, there was more than heat. It was tense. There was angst. There was tension. You were able to create that in an environment really by yourself, just with your character work, the way you approach the ring, your facial expressions, the music, the way you just made your way down the ramp. I mean, it was a vibe, and it really was a master at work. But I'm wondering, when you get to see the heel Hulk Hogan, because you never got to see the face Hulk Hogan at that point. So you're not seeing the red and yellow, you're seeing the black and white. You grew up watching the red and yellow, but you're in the building watching him do his thing. Tell me about that. The first time you see a Hulk Hogan entrance and performance in person, the relationship with the crowd, if you will.
So here's the thing that jumped off the page, that 93, 94, 95, I worked against Kevin Nash. I worked against Scott Hall. Sean was my partner. And, so I worked with those guys quite a bit. And as Razor and Diesel, we'll say. And then I've told this story on the podcast. I was on my couch sitting next to my dad when Nitro came on the air, and Scott Hall showed up and Kevin Nash showed up, and then the big turn. And then, wasn't, months then I showed up. The one thing that, God, this sounds so cliche-ish, Conrad, but it's not, is that, without sounding like a pompous ass, I think my ear, because of my experience, I got more of a trained ear than most. But, brother, Hogan had heat. And I think Scott, who was with us today, and I think Kevin would tell you in that, yeah, they had heat. but when you brought the Immortal one and flipped him, and when he worked through the curtain and that suspension of disbelief and him leading the charge, people knew that they were seeing the biggest box office attraction in the world, but they hated his ass. And I was envious of that in so many ways, because you got, okay, so let me line this up. You know, I come in and I think they had just added 6 pockets, 6 on this, but you know, my debut, is he going to be at the NWA or not? And Kevin Sullivan wanted me to go with the 4 Horsemen deal. So I was going to be a heel. In my mind, of course, okay, what's the landscape? All right. So I was coming off Double J and all that kind of stuff. And okay, I can get heat. I have a ton of confidence in my ability, but there was no doubt about the situation that there was Hulk Hogan as the top heel. And I say this without all due respect, because you had Lex already there. You had Sting, and he was starting his Crow thing. You had Flair. You had, shit, what a rock star talent. But you had Hogan and others. And in my mind, when you watched it, you knew, all right, Hogan's got all the heat and he's carrying everything. Because look at the NWO. It's all over the 2 hours, soon to be 3 hours. But it was a thread of the NWO and who's leading that. It's, you know, the only thing I could really compare it to as watching on TV. You know, there was a time when Lawler broke his leg and Jimmy Hart just had a slew of heels, and they didn't have any really top babyface because Lawler's out with his leg. It was Jimmy Hart and others. Now you have a guy. Anyway, Conrad, the people like you were just kind of referencing, I just kind of went, damn, that's kind of a bucket list. I really never got to see peak Hogan as a babyface in the Hulkamania era, but I did get to see peak Hogan in the NWO era as a lead heel. And you knew, okay, this is who they're coming to see. We're others.
Do you, as a performer, pick up anything he's doing and say, oh, I like that, I'm going to borrow that?
He obviously was, how old was Hogan in there? He was definitely in his 40s.
Yeah, he's in his 40s.
But his, I can't say old school because it's the most simplicity thing. Damn, what a given for a guy at this time, maybe not 6'7", 6'5", or 6'6", whatever. He gave so much as a heel. I mean, he would get bounced around on all those smashes. Sure, they'd end up with heat for the most part, but seeing the tip-top guy, it's like Lawler would do in Texas, you know, late 80s, early 90s, when he was the baby face and we went out to Texas and we were a little bit of heels, all that. Just kind of that mentality that, hey, man, if you're going to be the top heel, you've got to get your baby faces over. And I just would always like, all right, this is Hulkamania doing this. Just kind of, maybe it was more of a reinforcement. He would always place himself kind of at the right place on those big smash comebacks where he'd get the biggest pop by getting punched. Just, I think more than anything, reinforcement, just what a star he was.
I do think too, you know, sometimes his offense gets criticized and people are very critical of it and say, oh, he couldn't work and he had bad matches and blah, blah, blah. I would challenge you to go watch his work as Hollywood Hogan. He had pretty good matches against Lex Luger, Diamond Dallas Page, Roddy Piper, Bill Goldberg, Bret Hart. I think you could even make an argument that Hogan's doing some of his best work here, because now as the heel, he does have to move around a little more. And as you said, get bounced around a little more. I want to ask you, though, when we talk about Hulk Hogan and WCW, we continually hear pretty much the same phrase. And some people consider this sour grapes, but there are people who would talk about his political maneuvering in WCW. Some people talk about, oh, Hulk Hogan played politics. And that's usually said in a negative tone, but only amongst fans. I've yet to meet one of the guys, I'm talking about a veteran, who says, oh, I can't believe he played politics. Those are not usually the guys who had really successful careers who are saying that, Jeff. Where do you land on the did Hulk Hogan play politics discussion?
I mean, if you don't think, you can substitute having relationships with the word politics.
That's right.
The folks that say I don't play politics, that's playing politics in and of itself. You're kidding yourself of, oh, I don't play politics. Yeah, you're playing politics right now by saying you don't play politics. It's just having human relationships. But Hogan was he just a shrewd businessman. I mean, the bash at the beach, I got it. Like he played chess all the time. Again, audience of one, whether it was Louis Tillett, Jerry Jarrett, Jerry Lawler, Vern Gagne, Vince McMahon Sr., Jr., or the suits at Turner. He always played chess. And when he felt like he was getting checkmate, if you will, and you kind of think of how it ended the WCW days, however it may be, at the end of the day, I think the record speaks for itself. There's probably the book written about it. I think Hogan checked them and got him a nice check written to him. That Hogan was a businessman, and he took care of Hogan. And if that meant taking care of the company, good. If it meant taking care of Hogan and not the company, that's how he looked at it. He was a shrewd, super shrewd businessman, and he knew he had the leverage. Same at TNA. He sensed Dixie Carter like that, and that's not a knock. That is I'm applauding his business skill set, big time.
Hey, let me ask you, when you come back to I shouldn't say come back, when you're there the first time in 96, you had, of course, famously walked out on Vince McMahon. And then we know when you come back for your second run in WCW, you've quote unquote held up Vince McMahon. Did you ever have a conversation with Hulk about either of your Vince exits?
I was thinking through that, just kind of the timeline and as the pod coming up, like our interactions. I just remember when I came back the second time, I can't put it into words, but just kind of a tip to the cat, like, great to see you around here. Something, in fact, it appears everything worked out just fine for you getting over here. That was just kind of his way of saying, tip the cat. But again, let's preface that by saying he knew at that point, he's always on guard. Because WCW, and he was the highest paid guy, he was, I'm sure, looking A, to protect his check, but B, he's a business guy. He'd love to do anything to turn it around, as long as he was a part of it. And I'm sure that he was probably a little leery, but he never shared that with me. That was my perception of it.
Listen, sometimes when people have relationships with our parents, they sometimes feel like they can, I don't know, son us a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, did that ever happen with you and Hulk? Because we know what high regard he had for your dad, but if he considered, himself friends with your dad, then do you think that shaped an opinion about how he viewed you?
I always thought that. I never had a conversation, but but he's not the only one. Like everybody that I knew, my dad was close to that. And I'm talking about, Jesus. I mean, I was well aware in 93, 94, Bruce shared with me, but did share with me everything that I knew. Hell, even in the territory, I knew my father being my father was a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
Like Bruce was one of the first guys that he didn't say, "Hey, Jeff, I feel bad for you," but that's kind of what he was saying. Like, "Hey, man, you and Razor are kicking ass, but we don't need your dad to tell us that." Yeah, I mean, I'm probably not doing a good example, but I always felt that with Hulk. I always, and I don't think me and Eric have ever talked about it. I always kind of thought that whatever the relationship Eric and my father had, not just kind of influence,
but definitely influenced me and Eric's relationship. And
Well,
others.
I don't know that you've ever talked about that with Eric, but Eric has said on the show before, and I know you don't get a chance to listen to everything Eric and I produce. Lord bless it, but he basically was of the opinion that for his taste and opinion, he felt like the business had passed your father by.
Sure.
Like creatively, he was trying to quote things and suggest things that had worked, in the 70s or the 80s. And I think Bischoff, and he would view it differently now, I'm sure, with the benefit of hindsight. But at the time, he was thinking, hey, I got to have new, 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 new.
Yep.
The cruiserweight stuff, the takeover angle. He needed to take risks and he needed new ideas. He felt like the sort of tried and true wrestling formula had been exhausted with all of the previous managerial experiences there, whether it was Watts or Ole or whoever. So I don't think he had a personal issue with your dad. I just think it was
Philosophical.
hey, he was successful back in his day, but what he wants to do now wouldn't work now, or else he would be doing it with his own territory in Memphis.
And I have had conversations with him, my stepmom, my siblings, others that, and I think you refer to it as blind spot.
Yeah.
I think my old man had a way of delivering his message. I'm very conscientious about this. Like maybe not to a fault, but the delivery of a philosophy or a mindset is super important. And I think a lot of times, my old man meant well, his delivery on what his message, because hell, he knew we got to do something different. You got to do this and do that, but he didn't come across that way. Now, I don't know about specifically in what we're talking about here in 90, what would that be? 94, 95, when Hulk and Eric and all that kind of stuff. Again, here's kind of the flip side of that. In my dad kind of being, okay, Hulk called me, so I've got to kind of say what I think Hulk wants me to say. And Hulk might have said, in all due respect, hey, brother, we got to get some wrestling mentality in here. Jerry, I learned so much from you in 1981, 82, and 83. And my dad going, okay, it's what Hulk wants to hear. No, it wasn't. I don't know if that makes sense, but yes, well aware.
Hey, let's man, I hate to just out you like this, but I'm going to.
Here we go.
I think you're one of the best chess players there's ever been in pro wrestling. When it comes to reading the board and understanding timing and structure and positioning, I've never met anybody who was more careful and strategic. And I really appreciate that about you. But the person who was written about as being that master chess player for at least 4 decades was Hulk Hogan. You think you picked up a few chess moves from the Hulkster through the years?
I can't come up with any chess names, but Conrad, how can you not?
Yes.
If you're a student of this game and want to be successful, obviously in my sobriety, the contentment and happiness that the MasterCard commercial, those are priceless. And so things that I did 20 years ago that might be a chess move, the realization are, hey, Jeff, you may be able to pick up a piece here and there and all that, but ultimately you're checkmating yourself. I don't know if that makes sense. But as far as understanding I think we are both saying the reason we're saying chess, in that chess is not checkers. Checkers is one move. Chess is a long-term thought process and all that. When I kind of think through, and we touched on it earlier, when you have a deep understanding, and I think there's so many things in today's world that are the principles aren't just applied. Now, I apply them in new fashions, but kind of we talked about the heel factory, right? Okay, the heel factory, the whole process is we got this baby face, and this is something that my father would preach and preach and preach and preach and preach. And when you kind of look at it, but I think Hogan I'm sure he learned kind of this whole mentality is, if you're going to be a top baby face and he's talking to Vince McMahon every day on the phone. And let's just say I got Kamala, and I'm going around Kamala, and I'm looking at a booking sheet, and I've got him in the Garden, I got him in the Spectrum, I got him in Boston Garden, and got him on this loop. Okay, we're going to be coming back. Okay, we're coming back, and then we're going to come back a third time this year. So, hey, Vince, do you have Boss Man winning strong on this month's Madison Square Garden card? No, he's in so-and-so. Hey, man, can you move him to the Garden? Because he's coming back next loop, and I'm facing him. Oh, okay. All right. Now, the heel that I'm working with after Kamala and after Boss Man, do you have, and I'm just picking names out of hat, do you have this guy? No, he's in this. I tell you what, is there any way you can kind of jump him? Because I really would like to draw money with him. It's kind of those kind of moves when you things don't happen overnight. And that's where to really build and plant the seeds and build the characters and all of that kind of stuff is because you can't fabricate emotion out of thin air. It's a build and a build and a build and a build and a build. And I think those kind of chess pieces, it's not called just long-term booking. I think it's much deeper than that. And then there's also the relationships and this guy and the marketing and just all of it going together. So I gave you the long answer, but yes, when you look at the business success of Hogan, and he didn't bat 1,000, but man, he's right up there. You know, you look at others, and I mean, hell, The Rock, no matter how you slice and dice it, he took a gamble to step out of the business at a young age. Austin, you know, a bunch, but yeah, Hogan is maybe the best chess player of all time.
I think we probably need to shut it down from here, but I do want to say I want to do another Hulk Hogan episode, Jeff.
All right.
I'd like to do it live too. I'd love for us to do it in the afternoon, have a live studio audience, take some Hulk Hogan questions. But I feel like we just scratched the surface about you and him in that 2000 era WCW.
Yep.
I'd also really like to talk about the hokey pokey with him and TNA. Is he coming? Is he not? We've got the entire Dixie conversation to have. And I'd really like to talk about his WWE return in 2002, how you would have liked to have seen him used. And I'd love to get your opinion about Shawn Michaels and his match at SummerSlam in 2005. There's a lot to unpack, a lot more Hulk Hogan stuff to talk about. So we'll plan on circling a date. If we don't do it next week, we will do it in the coming weeks.
Wow.
We got to figure out when we can go live. But I feel like we could go another 2 hours easily on Hulkster. Don't you think, Jeff?
Well, that's you just damn, Conrad. I'm thinking we got it all in. Just WCW when I returned.
Yeah.
Just said that, but not just the Bash at the Beach. Just kind of there's some episodes. There's a Gainesville Nitro, and there's some different stuff there. But then me flying to Japan.
Yes.
To crack Hogan. I won't get into it, but it's literally I'm sitting in the parking lot of the asylum, and I had a conversation, and I said, shit, I gotta go. This is an opportunity here. We'll see. But that was based solely on a phone conversation I had with Hulk. And that's kind of when I think through, look, we didn't have a signed deal. Maybe he's playing me against Vince and all this, but at the end of the day, I fly over there, and it was the #1 moment in TNA history at a point, whatever, the guitar shot. But think about that chess move, Conrad. Maybe, yeah, I didn't even think there's multiple things, but that was a chess move by Hogan, if you ask me.
So much to talk about. We'll do it in the coming weeks. Recommend one of your favorite Hulk Hogan matches for people to go watch between now and our next Hulkster episode.
I kid you not, because I go find a Hulk Hogan Japan match. Just go find one. I think you will have a different appreciation for the man that we refer to as, you know, the red and yellow or the black and white. It is when you see it in 2025 context, you just put on a different kind of frame of reference to go, okay. That guy is a well-rounded performer.
Jeff, I wanted to mention this earlier when you were talking about it, and it slipped my mind, but You know, we have a lot of professional stand-up comedians who listen to our show, right? There's a huge crossover, and in my mind, I think even in the industries of stand-up comedy and professional wrestling. In both cases, you're trying to get over, you're trying to sell tickets, you're trying to work towards a TV special. I mean, you're always evolving. You're trying new moves, you're trying new things. You've got different opening acts, the whole deal.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I'm saying all that to say comedians are famous for sort of trying a few jokes with a crowd to figure out what type of crowd it is and then deliver them the type of show they know they want. Meaning, if he looks out and he sees, hey, this is all couples tonight, there may be jokes that work best for couples. If he looks out and he sees, oh, it must be ladies' night, there's no guys here tonight, he may have a different approach. If he's got a family, so if there's just a series of families because it's an all ages show, well, there goes a lot of his blue humor. You get where I'm going.
Definitely.
The comedian is asked to, on the fly, see what the audience is buying and then give them more of that. You're going to see what works and do more of that. And you're going to see what doesn't work and you'll do less of that. Now, these days in pro wrestling, we call that, hey, we're going to call it in the ring.
Right.
But stand up comedy does it the same way. I'm saying all that to say, if you watch a Hulk Hogan in Japan match, what you're going to see is Hulk is going to give them what they're buying. Hulk is going to throw some things out there, see what they're responding to. And I think that's what he did here in America. He would listen to the audience and see what kind of crowd they were and give them that kind of match. We saw him turn his working boots on when he was in late WCW, as we mentioned, Lex Luger and Bret Hart. And I mean, he had a series of really good matches with those guys. And I don't think that people who saw his WWF stuff may have even thought he had that in him. But that wasn't what the role called for. That isn't what that crowd was there to see. Hogan was a master of his trade. I hope you'll go check out some of his Japanese work. Jeff and I are going to regroup and make a whole new episode about Hulk Hogan in the coming weeks. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications bell. You don't want to miss us the next time we're live. That's myworldpod.com. That's myworldpod.com. Jeff, this was a blast, man. I hope everybody enjoys some Hulk tributes this week because that's what we're doing day after day after day this week. And I don't think we'll get to all the stories. What a legacy he leaves behind.
It's a crazy legacy. And again, I started by saying this, but you know, the Mount Rushmores and this and that, and the world we live in is super hypercritical and everything that kind of goes with it, good and bad. But if you're listening to this podcast, My World with Jeff Jarrett, well, my world next year will be my 40th year, and I'm very blessed and so many things. But when you really think through, and I know there's Gorgeous George and Lundus and Lawler and territories and all this kind of stuff. But as time went on and you kind of look at, boom, the world exploded. And yes, technology changes everything. It changed it with the iPhone. It changed it with the streaming services. Well, when cable television came along and you had the son of a promoter, Vince Jr., and you had this bass player from Florida, just kind of the song and the singer met. And in a lot of ways, it is the entry into what we know is professional wrestling today. And so, Conrad, I'll come around to your way of thinking. He's not on Mount Rushmore, which he is of mine, of all time. But in the modern era, he is the Rushmore. I appreciate your time today, Connie. We had some fun today.
It was a blast. Go say your prayers. Go eat your vitamins. Go train hard and listen to your parents.
At that fourth commandment.
See you next week right here on My World.
Peace.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. and you want to talk about early, you can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.